welcome you all to our fifth meeting of the year. Right, where are we? Right here. So, apologies, Max. To approve a record minutes of the 9th of January 2024, pages 7 to 16. Can I have a mover? On this seconder? Thank you.
Yes.
All in favour? Against? Motion? Are you okay with minutes? Thank you.
Not against them, but I was late in.
No. Thank you. Right, so just a few introductions, I think, really. Point three, several introductions, really. Right, first of all, welcome to Naomi, Mrs. Naomi Whitmore, who is our newly appointed independent, as basically saying, member of the committee. Do you want to say a few minutes, a few things about yourself? That's where you're from.
Yeah, I can do. Excuse me, I currently took 19 years experience in public sector finance. Probably about 11 of those now working in internal audit. For the last 9 months, I've been working at SIPA, and I actually train audit committees. And having never sat on an audit committee, it didn't feel right to me. So I got in touch with an audit partnership when they were recruiting and asked if I could be considered for this position. I come at it from that I know all the theory, but I don't know the practice. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this actually operates.
Okay,
So,
and I will accept any critical comments. I'm sure we all will on our behaviour. And thank you, Denmark Audit Partnership, for the recruitment process. We weren't sure if we'd get anyone. Great, thank you. Also to welcome our new starters, I suppose, really. Bishop Fleming. I think there's sloppy later on. Welcome to Alex and Charlie. And anyone joining online? There's no one else joining you. No, thank you. So our next auditors for the next 5 years. Next 5 years. Okay, might be a lot more you like, but who knows? And I think joining us remotely, we've got Ken Johnson from Dead Audit who's joining us. I think everyone got your name. Everyone got name plates somewhere? No, I thought Paul Millermas from Dead Audit Partnership.
Yeah.
We got Alex, who's going to introduce himself shortly. I think everyone knows. Do you all know all our officers? Is it work perhaps? Officers introduce themselves.
I've met Bishop Fleming, but yeah, to my left is Adam Tate from the governance, who also started the finance team as well, and Simon, third exam monitor officer.
Our candidates, I think you probably get similar names on their maps. I'll update this really. There'll be a governance survey going out before the next meeting. It's currently on. We're reducing it, 80, 90 questions.
There was about 90.
So it will come down. The government survey targeted for our councillors, really to see the effectiveness of our governance committee. And I think want to improve on really. So it's good practice. So a good chance to comment on good practice, bad practice, things you want to see in the future. Again shortly, and then we'll get the results and discuss those with future meetings. Oh yes, any declarations of interest? No,
And
thank
I'm
you.
Super.
And before we go on, I just want to we've got our annual council meeting where committee members may or may not change. So I want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your input and challenge and positive interactions with us. Possibly see you all back here, but I don't know. We'll see what happens at the annual council meeting. Good. So moving on. Housekeeping. Can I ask you to switch off your mobiles to silence, please? I think I've welcomed everyone. There's no press attending, is there? Anyone attending with microphones on silent, is this you?
It is being recorded.
So it's been reported, it'll be on YouTube and next week or two. Can you please speak clearly and check your voice? Looking out here, I think the camera's there, but the camera's there. It's a full meeting, so we normally introduce ourselves as councillor, or this is not we. No fire alarm tonight,
none planned.
none planned, so if there is one, we will follow the officers, but yeah, in the car park.
Front door and we store
Good.
the car park.
That's going to be done, I think. So moving on to item 5, is it? Just agree between part A and part B. Can I just have a proposal from that and the seconder? Thank you. So, part A, introductions to Bishop Fleming. You got a presentation to give us, or we're going to talk through?
We haven't done the
No.
presentation, but I
We
think,
got a paper edition.
yeah, so what would be useful if perhaps Charlie and I just explain a bit about us, so that, because I'm sure there's lots of people sat around here probably thinking, good. So if I kick off and then I'll let Charlie introduce himself, if that's okay. So Bishop Fleming are new to local government audit. This is the first lot of external audits that we're actually doing in local government. And new to the market, and obviously PSAA, who actually did the procurement exercise, were very keen to bring more people in and more companies into the market, because I'm sure you're all well aware of the massive backlog of the audit, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the consultations when we get to the audit plan around what's happening. Not that that directly affects yourselves, I'm pleased to say. So as I say, PSAA were very keen to get, not just the big boys actually doing local government audit, but actually bring in some new companies to actually pick up some of those audits. And Bishop Fleming were one of the people that threw their hat into the ring. So having said all that about Bishop Fleming, my background, so what we did is obviously we were very aware that Bishop Fleming do lots of academies audits and other sorts of audits, but actually in terms of, as I say, local government and NHS, we have up to now done very, very little. So what Bishop Fleming did was recruit a lot of people at sort of my level and the manager level in terms of bringing in that expertise. And my background is basically through and through public sector audit. So I started live with district audit, for those of you that remember that's a long time ago. Became the audit commission. Started off doing public sector audit in Birmingham, moved to Bristol, carried on with the audit commission, and then obviously when the audit commission was abolished, I moved over to Grant Thornton and I actually joined Bishop Fleming I think it's 4 months ago now. So I bring quite a lot of experience in public sector audit. That doesn't mean I'm some kind of huge expert on the area, because government is quite complex. But I bring you it in terms of I know how the system works. I know what the National Audit Office Code expects of its external auditors. I know what we actually need to do. So I bring that expertise, hopefully, to yourselves. So I just wanted to reassure you that just because we're new boys into the process, it doesn't mean to say that we don't know what we're doing. Because hopefully between us, as I said, there's quite a wealth of experience amongst ourselves. So that's me in a nutshell. Charlie, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I'll say good evening. My name's Charlie Martin, and I guess I'm the director of Bishop Fleming, so I'll be acting as the engagement manager for the audit. So working with Alex, John and his team to conclude the audit as we go through this year. In terms of my background, it has been predominantly in the public sector or the not-for-profit sector. So I started with PwC originally, and I moved to join Bishop Fleming back in 2021. And it's a sector I've always been keen to be involved with in some ways. So the opportunity to work with councils such as yourselves seemed a natural fit in this. Working with John and his team, there it is.
Thank you. And what involved from you, what you do for us, please, with the agenda, thank you. So,
Sure.
Yes, please.
Real question.
Yes, please do.
Could you give us a little bit more insight into the organisation, sort of heads, turnover, sort of the commercials and give us an idea of the size where you're based, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll try, because I'm still a new girl at Bishop Abbey, I'll kick off, but Charlie probably knows more about the organisation, so, it is a much smaller organisation compared with, I know you've been dealing with Frank Thornton, which obviously is a national audit firm. We're based predominantly down in the South West, and we've got a number of different offices, so I'm based in the Bristol office, and Charlie's down in the Plymouth office, and we've got other offices as well, so Worcester, Cheltenham, Exeter, sure I would forget one, but sort of based across the Southwest predominantly. And the audits that we've picked up in terms of local government are predominantly in the Southwest, not all of them, because some are in the Southwest, the other was going to the West Midlands, and across to Oxfordshire as well. So it's mainly that sort of area, so that we're actually picking up audits. In terms of heads, number of people, employees, I'm going to look at Charlie now.
So it's, I think it's 40 partners, with 200 individuals in the team. And that's the pool of people we draw upon to do your audit as well as other audits.
Yeah, thank you. And because the main concern as well is obviously we've been incredibly lucky with the auditors that we've been using. We haven't seen huge delays. Nationally, it's been a disaster. How can you give us reassurance that with you we can remain to be in that positive situation?
Well, that is our aim, to be honest, going forward. And obviously, as I said, I'll talk a little bit about the consultations when we talk about the audit plan. And a lot of those are around trying to reset the system and make it better. Whether that will make it better is kind of out of the debate at the moment. So our aim will be to actually deliver to the various deadlines and that's how we're setting ourselves up, making sure that we resource them to actually do those audits. I mean, clearly, if something goes awry at some of the local authorities that we actually do, that might delay some of them. But I mean, obviously, we've read the prior year reports, had conversations with John and the finance team. So I think we're assured that there shouldn't be anything that actually will cause us to delay the actual audit or anything that would have a knock-on effect. So at the moment, I never like to say I absolutely guarantee your audit will be done by the deadline, because I think that's a foolish thing to do, because sometimes other things outside of our control trip us up. But that would be our aim. As I say, my background has always been in local government audit and NHS audit, and actually not being able to do the deadlines. It's quite soul-destroying. So from our perspective, we want to get in, do the audit and get out. And I'm sure John and the team also want to get us in and get us out as soon as possible as well. So
Brilliant. Last one through the chair. So are you confident that right now you're resourced to be able to meet those new contracts you've taken on?
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to reset, I mean, I'm not an auditor, I'm not an accountant, but nationally, there's lots of outstanding audits and consulting there on how to clear themselves off to reset. I think it was 90 last September, 90 councils, there was a high number, wasn't there, I think?
Yeah, and if I can just add also to reassure councillors that myself, Alex and Charlie and the team have met a number of times before tonight's meeting as well. So we talked about planning the dates, etc., when those audits will take place. The team have also had a separate meeting with the valuers as well. So we've started to kickstart that process as early as we can. So we're reassured as much as we can be that we've got a good team from Bishop Fleming, and obviously those early discussions are taking place to get the audits in train and hopefully have them signed off by the dates we've agreed.
I think it's quite proactive evaluation after what's been happening nationally on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, good, thank you. So moving on, business continuity update.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Miles. I'm the Emergency Planning Officer. I lead on Business Continuity Council. I've been asked to give you an update on our current business continuity position, but in doing so, I'm just going to provide a quick explanation of what business continuity is. So business continuity is the process for assessing the risks faced by the organisation, whether these are internal risks such as system failure, or external emergencies such as flooding, extreme weather, or even infectious diseases, and analyse the impact it may have on our day-to-day operations. So business continuity management is about identifying what parts of the business we are unable we're not willing to lose, such as premises, staff or information, and put the necessary plans and mitigations in place. So if the worst happens, we are still able to maintain the core council essential services. So a key element of the business continuity management here is the identification of the council's critical functions. Critical functions are the services and activities that we are required to provide from either a statutory, safety, financial, or reputational perspective. Across the council, we have identified the maximum length of time we could tolerate a loss of each service or activity before the impact becomes what we consider unacceptable. In addition, we have identified the IT dependencies and resources such as people, premises, information and suppliers that are required to deliver these activities and functions. Where single points of failure have been identified internally, such as a single staff member that provides that function, we have identified these, and in some instances they have been mitigated. Where there is a reliance on an external supplier, the business continuity and disaster recovery checklist has been introduced. This will help assess if the supplier has suitable arrangements in place during the procurement stage, and this was rolled out to managers in January. For each critical function, a recovery time objective has been set, which is the point in time at which key services and activities will need to be resumed after disruption. Plans are therefore put in place to try and resume the service within this timeframe. We have worked closely with IT to ensure our plans are consistent with their disaster recovery arrangements, and they are also able to support those timeframes. So across the council, we have a range of plans in place. We have the Business Continuity Implementation Plan, which is the council's overarching response plan, and this outlines roles and responsibilities, activation triggers, restoration and recovery considerations. We also have the Business Continuity Policy, which sets a strategy for responding to a business continuity incident, as well as outlines the scope of the business continuity arrangements and how far they extend. We also have service resumption plans. These are the operational plans, and they contain response arrangements to maintain critical functions at the service level. Each service area has their own plan, and these are maintained by managers, and they're responsible for updating them. A new template has recently been drafted, and we're in the process of piloting it with the elections team before rolling it out across the whole organisation. There are also specific risk plans, such as a fuel shortage plan, which outlines the council's response to a fuel shortage. Finally, there are supporting plans, such as the crisis communications framework, that is currently in draft, but I'm working closely with the comms team to develop an operational plan of that. We previously had more of a strategy that wasn't as effective during the response. Exercise and testing is a vital element of the business continuity management life cycle, as it ensures our arrangements are validated. So we cannot consider any of our arrangements to be reliable until we have exercised it to prove it is actually workable. Exercises also allow staff to rehearse their response and to test technical arrangements. Last year, senior management signed off the exercise and testing strategy, which outlines the frequency of exercises and the types of exercises that we will complete across the organisation. To support the running of these exercises, we developed a playbook containing 10 different exercise scenarios. These vary in terms of the length it takes to deliver them and the complexity. So some of them are facilitated by myself, and others can be run by managers within their own teams. Last year, we facilitated 8 tabletop exercises. These were carried out across the organisation to test the arrangements of services that own a critical function, and these are the ones I referred to earlier. Smaller critical teams such as CCTV and the crematorium were also exercised. Learning was captured and a report went to senior management containing a number of recommendations. Overall, managers had a good understanding of their service area and what their critical functions were. However, further awareness training is needed to increase the confidence in using plans during response and familiarisation of response arrangements. In order to support this, as part of containing a number of recommendations. Overall, managers had a good understanding of their service area and what their critical functions were. However, further awareness training is needed to increase the confidence in using plans during response and familiarisation of response arrangements. In order to support this, as part of that new service resumption template, which I made reference to, we'll be including action cards in there, which outlines the initial stages of response to make sure that procedures are being followed. In addition to exercising, we have recently procured organisational resilience training for all managers. Although it is open to all staff, we procured a 3-year licence. This was a key recommendation following the exercises, and the training is a 3 to 4 hour e-learning package that will provide staff with a basic level of business continuity knowledge. IT are currently working on getting that uploaded to our system, and we hope to roll that out in the near future. So in terms of next steps, all services will be moved across that new service assumption template. These service assumption plans will then need to be validated through an annual exercise to ensure they're accurate, reliable, and workable. All managers will be required to complete the business continuity training. We are considering a joint cyber and business continuity exercise in 2024. And finally, the National Security Risk Assessment was released by government towards the back end of 2023. So the Local Resilience Forum, which is a multi-agency partnership of the emergency services, local authorities, and other key responders, have assessed this for Devon, Cornwall, and Isle of Scilly, and they've developed a more localised community risk register. So our next steps are to assess those risks and ensure that the plans that we currently have in place are appropriate and identify where further mitigation may be needed. And in those instances, we'll be looking to introduce a new plan, similar to the fuel shortage plan, where it specifically focuses on that one risk. Just before I finish up on, I was just being made aware that there's 2 outstanding recommendations, audit recommendations for emergency planning, which I thought I'd just give you a quick update on. So one of them is the development of the response and recovery plan. We currently rely on the Devon Emergency Plan and Partnership Response and Recovery Plan, which is fine, but we did want a more specific, localised version, and we have been working on that. But what we want to do is include outputs from the National Power Outage exercise and also the plan, which is at a Local Resilience Forum level. So once we receive those outputs, we'll localise them, we'll form our own responses, and then we'll be able to get that plan in place. The other audit recommendation was the training to councillors on their role in civil emergencies. We had identified a date to provide this training, and we were halfway through the training when unfortunately the Queen died, so the rest of the training was cancelled. So after that training, unfortunately our environmental agency colleague got a new post, and so I needed to wait for them to determine their priorities. So I'm going to work with Democratic Services to identify a suitable time to reissue this training, and it's got a revised deadline of the 31st of July. I'll be happy to take any questions on business continuity.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Russell.
Yeah, I know that we've gone a long way to try and secure our IT on the backups and the off-site backups. Have we externally tested our IT systems with perhaps a white hat organisation? Because we can test internally, but I think IT is something that's more than likely to be brought down, if it is brought down, from external forces. And it's quite hard to anticipate where an external force may come from, and whether we've even considered using an external organisation to see if there are vulnerabilities in the system that we haven't spotted.
So I might need to take that question away and actually give it to Sarah Higgins or IT team to pick that up. What I can say is the recovery time objectives that we've outlined in our business continuity plans will be validated and tested by the IT team. So we will have some level of assurance that we're able to recover our IT applications within a certain time frame, which is the level of assurance I can provide today.
Could you look into the feasibility of external testing? So
Officer Triggs is just trying to jump in again. He always knows the answer.
I couldn't say I have the technical answer, but the ICT team do have external testing done on the network. So there is external testing done. I can't recall the exact regularity of it, but there is external testing done.
Thank you for the reassurance.
So
that is for people probing from the outside to see if they can.
this is, yeah, it's done, but ESN network, I think it's called. So there is, say, continuous testing done on the external environment to our service.
That's Jones.
What scenarios are we catering for through the work that you've done?
So we've done a business impact assessment where we've looked at all the services that we provide, and then we've got general risks, which could range from lots of different scenarios, from loss of premises loss of staff, infectious diseases, right down to something more specific, like one of our suppliers going out of business. So for each service area, a risk assessment was completed as part of the business impact assessment. And like I said, we've now got the community risk register that's going to be produced. And so we'll go through that community risk register and we'll do a gap analysis to see what risks there are. Do our current plans meet that risk, or do we need to make changes to mitigate it?
So in terms of a pandemic or something like that, are we in a stronger position with the work that you've done? I imagine now you work in that when our last pandemic came.
Well, I joined, I think it was about 8 weeks before COVID.
I'm sure there's no.
So I would say that we've done quite a bit of work on our business continuity arrangements since then. So I feel very strongly that we were in a better position than we were prior to COVID.
Yeah, can I just clarify that when we get to part B, you'll see one of the lists has come off. It's to do. So.
Yes, if I can just add to what Alex has said, Chair, that obviously Alex, as you said, joined just before the
yes.
Was instrumental in part of our sort of reaction to the pandemic and our business continuity, bringing those arrangements up to date. And it's also joining the incident management team. We've seen the management team on a daily basis, so she was fully aware of the actions that we were taking as a management team. Very well guiding us through the process as well. So I would say we're in a far stronger position now following the pandemic, and we'll be ready for the next one. But again, we don't know how, but potentially that might
you never know. That's the whole
affect
thing.
us all when we're in a stronger position having gone through that, and obviously with Alex's experience and knowledge having taken us through that, we're in a strong position for the next one. It does know us.
Okay, Alex, then Matt's question.
If I may, Chair, the whole point of our business continuity arrangements is them to be flexible. So you're asking about specific risks. Yes, some of our plans relate to specific risks, but what we want is our business continuity plans to be flexible and be able to respond to a range of different risks. So we've identified sort of minimum amount of resources, minimum amount of staff that we need, and which ones we need to focus on in a recovery. So hopefully, depending on what the interruption is or the disruption, we'll be able to at least provide those essential services.
Thank you. Question.
Yes, during the pandemic, Mr. Triggs informed us that in the event that a zoo within our area was to fail financially, it falls upon the district council to take that over and make sure the animals are safe. Could you inform me of the plan which you have in case one of our zoos may come to close? And how
It's a lot of detail. I know Alex.
I can't say I have a specific plan if the zoo has to close. It does come with a licensing. So that's sort of outside my scope.
Just like testing water here.
Yeah, I mean,
There are procedures we would need to go through in terms of the licensing arrangements. I mean, we can obviously give you a much more fuller update and bring Katie in to give an update on the licensing procedures for that. I mean, in terms of the pandemic, obviously we did support the zoos. We had obviously the business grants, etc. So we made sure that those that were high risk got those grants as soon as we could get them out the door, in a sense, to make sure that they had that financial support, and also made sure that the team worked closely with the zoos. So Katie and the team were in contact with them on a regular basis to make sure that we had an up-to-date position on their not only their financial position but their operational position, so that we could provide that financial support and licensing support to them.
So we don't have a strategy for how we would jump in and look after the animals if the zoo was to something go completely wrong.
There would be arrangements in place to make sure we are liaising very closely with the zoos and the zoo owners, and also then the arrangements then to no doubt be looking at alternative arrangements if we have to step in, such as working with other zoos, etc., to see where we potentially would need to step in. But again, for a more fuller update, so I would probably need to refer you to Katie to get that level of detail. But there are procedures and safeguards in place to make sure that zoos wouldn't fail.
If the chair thinks that's valuable, it just seems like it's an out there risk, but it would be very hard to implement quickly a solution, I think.
There are thousands and thousands of scenarios, and I think what I was saying was the main thing is to get the people. Yeah, the main thing is when you phone council, someone can trigger the emergency plan.
That's
And call the experts in, call up the licensing team. And find, things like that. That's where the resources start. My experience is, who would have planned for that pandemic in 4 years ago? In the 8th week here, it's just sort of,
it was on our risk register, Jeff, back then, so we did have.
Yes.
Well,
after avian flu and other things, so it wasn't.
It was highlighted on our risk register, but I think as Alex has articulated very well, that it's about having a plan that is flexible, but also making sure that we've got good and clear communications as well. So when these things do materialise, we can communicate well with our communities, but also we work then closely with those organisations such as zoos and other businesses, obviously make sure that we're there to help where we can.
I sit on licensing, so I will raise that as something in the medium term.
Thank you.
But we'll tell the animals not to escape in the short term, just wait until we're all in this.
But it's.
No, you're right, and,
It would be a maintenance event, which could have knock-ons. And I'm sure there would be some level of, panic dialing on the telephone to resolve it, so.
But the main thing is we got their phone number and they would have a plan in place.
And I think, Jeff, the zoos have plans in place as well, because obviously, even though we have a licensing requirement, where other zoos have closed, obviously animals have then been transferred to other zoos. So there are national zoo protocols in place, as well as the licensing responsibilities that we have as a local authority.
It's also on our service risk register, which gets reviewed quarterly, and there's mitigations on there as well. So it is something we're aware of, and it does get looked at.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering, we talked about pandemic, which is, as far as we're concerned, sorted over, and we're talking about the zoo. What climate change is that? Because it rains a lot here. Like, has that influenced your plan at all?
So obviously we have a climate change officer at the council. What we do is we work off the risks that are based on the National Security Risk Assessment and the Community Risk Register. These are risks that are more current. Climate change is obviously further out. I know it's happening as we speak, but yes, obviously you have the effects of the climate change. So increased flooding is one of them. So we have plans for flooding. So we're looking more at the probably the side effects as such of climate change and having specific response plans to those rather than climate change as a whole.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's a really short answer, sort of, while continuity is our risk register, we'll probably invite Alex back at a future date. I've got some other areas we focus on the risk register. So we'll carry back to next year, Alex, for another update on us. Street.
Yeah, okay, just to add to what Alex has said, hopefully Alex has reassured you that we've got some good plans in place, and they are tested, but also through Paul and Devon Audit Partnership, we do build positive business continuity into the internal audit plan as well, and that's built in the plan we present shortly for 24-25. So there are a number of days set aside to then obviously test and look at the plans that obviously Alex has referred to this evening. Members will receive a report then on the reassurance then in terms of the regulator against that.
And I assume, take for granted, you've got contact with all the other agencies, Devon County Council, Coast Guards, and environmental agencies.
Yeah, so we have multiple partnerships. So we have the Devon Emergency Plan Partnership, the Local Resilience Forum, and we have recently re-established the North Devon Responders Forum as well, which is very beneficial because you get the real local knowledge from that one.
Because last one just reinvent the wheel, you get all that sort of knowledge. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Moving on to Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so good evening. Yes, so Paul McManus from Devon Audit Partnership. So this is my standard update for our work since our last meeting. So starting on page 19, so we've got set top there, obviously states we're looking at reasonable assurance opinion for the year. This is underpinned by the 5 substantial, relatively reasonable, and 1 limited assurance opinions we've provided so far this year. The work is continuing, but that gives you a sense of the bulk of the opinions are reasonable, with only 1 limited so far. The reports that we've included in this, paper, so we've got three reasonable assurance reports. So one on, vehicle maintenance and the new, newish contract with SFS. A report on climate change and also a report on the harbour. But we also have a one limited assurance report on, building control, which, as you know, is a partnership that you share with Mid Devon. There's also mention of counter fraud. So as you know, Kent Johnson is giving his counter fraud assessment, so the annual assessment he does, in item 11. And then going on to page 20, obviously, we talked about recruitment of the independent member, and you may know DAP is also supporting the recruitment of independent members for other councils as well. Regarding completion of our plan for the year, so yes, we're continuing to complete our audits. Most notably, we're doing 2 follow-ups at the moment on information management and on cyber security. So I'm glad to say that on information management, we're sort of settling on a we think a reasonable assurance opinion. So that's increased from limited to reasonable. And we're currently doing our review of cyber security, and perhaps next meeting be useful to have a discussion about that. And you can ask the questions about the resilience of the system and all the improvements that have been made to make it more resilient and so on. We've agreed to defer 2 other audits on food safety and procurement because they don't have the officers present to support the audits. So is there any questions on the paper and the related reports?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I guess that you audit all of the councillors' trainings when they apply to these. Are all the councillors now trained for the mandatory training of the harbour?
I'm not sure what the current position is on that. That would be
one of them available.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, but I haven't got it to hand, but
That's just that the internal audit does audit mandatory training future.
Yeah, well, we would confirm that because, as you said, it's essential that the board members undertake the training. So we would review that as part of the audit, and we didn't item for anything current, but
I'm attending, as mentioned, with John and the Harbour Master in
beginning of April. Yeah.
April. I'll pick up on that there.
Yeah, but we will double check, Chair. I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
I'm
It was one that's almost there, isn't it?
the harbour training had all been done. I think there was one other training that we were just finalising, but I think we've had a conversation before that harbour training. We confirmed it had all been completed.
Obviously. Thanks for, I keep forgetting your. It was booze, thank you. Why don't we use first name, but easier.
I just want to ask, you have a chart saying that, we, the Harbour Board, that we made the 3 medium and 3 low priority management actions. But, what would they be? Are we allowed to know what they are, or have I missed where they appear? Sorry, I may have done.
yeah. So the 3. So we don't necessarily tend to list out all the management actions because we would, if it's a high, we'd probably list it. But I'll just reel them off. Well, firstly, there was no one regarding the council's website and the link to the harbour facilities and so on needed to be updated. So the second one was about the so there was a development strategy which was last it's dated from 2012 and covered 2012 to 2026, and we said, well, you need either a strategy or some sort of plan. You need to show that you're putting something down in writing about the longer term future and where you want to get to with the harbour. And then I suppose the third main one was about performance measures. Again, so what key performance indicators and measures do you want the harbour to have to measure, even if it's not sort of measuring performance, it's sort of health and resilience of the harbour. in terms of visitors and numbers and so on. So those are sort of the three main ones.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Jones?
Am I right in understanding that it refers to on the limited insurance that customer service reporting has been down or inactive because the survey tool we used to do it wasn't working?
Yeah, that's
Um,
correct.
What is the situation with that now? Because that's regular NPS scoring, I guess.
So that's just seeking customer, so about the control, sorry.
Yeah, it's on here
Yeah.
on the limited insurance that,
Yeah.
that effectively that was down.
Yeah, so for our audit, we said you're not currently you're not seeking, when you do work, you're not seeking reviews of customers or not able to get reviews, the reviews of customers because your tool doesn't work. So obviously the recommendation is you need to resume or get a tool that works so that customers can submit their feedback.
I was hoping Councillor Walker would be here because she's currently our representative.
Chair, I can
Okay,
just add to what Paul has said. So the survey tool wasn't being used. Part of that was due to we didn't have any. We had a very low number of staff in the technical support team, so the surveys weren't going out then to get that feedback from customers. Pleased to report now that we have filled those vacancies, and with the applications that are now coming in, there is a survey that goes back to the applicant to get that survey result. So every applicant that comes in now has a survey sent out to them so that we can now get those surveys back and we can obviously record customer satisfaction.
Right, cool. We have one councillor from each council on the board.
That's correct. Two, Chair. So
It's two.
yes, it's two members from Mid Devon, two members from North Devon, who sit on the building control partnership.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, I'd like to, some questions about the, building control. Because there seem to be a few things that contradict each other. It says we know on staff there are vacancies, spending a great deal of money on agency staff, but also that the demand for the services dropping due to the cost of living crisis. And it seems like if the demand is dropping, surely the issues around staffing should be lessened somewhat. And there has been a spike in the costs. Is that solely due to agency staff being used?
So I understand that there's more competition, particularly in the Mid Devon area from people coming from Exeter, from AIs coming from Exeter to who are doing more of the work. So that might be an indication. Obviously, agency staff are more expensive than your own staff, so you're paying more. And then I suppose you know if you don't have your own staff to do the work, then you can't generate and the income and so on. So it's probably a number of different factors, but obviously the partnership saw quite a few of the staff leave at very short notice, so a massive sort of reduction in the team, which I understand that the partnership is trying to resolve those issues and bring more people in, and that's Mr. Trigson.
Yeah.
Schedule was so just to add some reassurance. So when the audit was taking place, there were a number of vacant posts that had materialised within the team. Following that, during December, January, nothing posts have now been recruited into. So back in the autumn of last year, I think we were holding about 7 or 8 vacant posts across both North Devon and Mid Devon for the partnership. We've now managed to fill 5 of those, including the principal building control surveyors for those higher level posts that obviously we were then commissioning through agencies. So we're now relying on one agency member of staff, where before we were relying on a number. So those costs obviously have now started to come down through Q3, and obviously we'll see that in Q4. So the trading position has actually improved as of February. Income has also started to rise. So we've actually started to see an increase in market share. So at Q2, Q1, we had about 70% market share. That's now increased to 80% at Q3. So there's been an improvement in market share. Or alluded to, there's a lot more competition in the Mid Devon area from Exeter and surrounding areas. So that's where we see a decline in Mid Devon's income. Due to that, the income is retained by each authority, but we share the costs on a percentage basis of overall income. So therefore, because their income had dropped, we were picking up a higher proportion of costs in North Devon. That's hopefully now starting to be readdressed. So I think we have turned the corner with building control. The costs now are starting to come down because we're not using as many agency staff as we were. We've now got those posts filled, and we've started to see income increasing as well. So hopefully moving forwards, we're in a stronger position.
So building control, so if I may,
Chase.
if building control are, using an agency member of staff rather than being a full-time member of staff or a pro rata member of staff, what's the, cost implication, of having an agency member of staff over having a member of staff that we have and the superannuation that we pay within having our own staff?
I mean, obviously, we brought that report back in September when we looked at agency staff versus permanent staff. I think we then emailed out some examples of some of those after. I don't know if that included a building control member. I know we looked
I
at
don't
that.
remember it. It's the spike in the costs
If
here.
I can perhaps clarify that, very happy about, but in September, we got another report coming on our land view periods, which is about staffing generally, recruitment retention.
Yeah, so that's actually, I think, is around the sort of workforce planning
Yeah, so
and following up from the agency
it
report.
covers the whole strategy.
We have done, but the question around building control, I haven't got the exact figures in terms of agency.
No,
It will be more expensive. I can assure you of that because agency staff generally are more costly. However, the price we pay the agency is the overall cost, whereas obviously the staff cost hourly rate is obviously the hourly rate paid to the employee, but then we've got employees' national insurance and pension contributions to add on to that. So there is a difference, but it's not as great as looking at the core hourly rates.
That was built into my question with the reference to superannuation. What I'm trying to find out is what is the percentage above cost when we're using an agency? And I don't think in any of my questions in the agency, I've managed to get the reassurance of the answer saying, yes, an agency member of staff typically costs 30% more than an employed member of staff. And that's what I'm trying to hammer down. And I don't know how to ask the question to get the answer.
The examples that I emailed out after it was the September meeting, where we looked at agency versus employee. That gave some examples of certain posts we held, which and obviously included the overall cost to NDC of employing them, which was salary, NI and pension. That would give a total cost. And then that was compared against the agency cost of a similar post. So those examples you'll be able to see, well, okay, if the employed post in total was costing 50,000 a year and the agency cost was costing 60,000 a year, you'll then be able to see what the percentage difference is between the two total costs, because it needs to be taken into consideration that the employee hourly rate needs to have the national insurance and pension contribution added onto it to get the total cost of that person compared to the agency total cost of that person, because that's taking into account the employee's cost as well.
I fully understand that calculation.
So can I just put in that these are very variable depending on the contract, the agency company and so on, and the time and the specialist skills. So it can go up and down. There's lots of variations that are involved. So giving a total figure of 50% more than those staff is really difficult to do, I think.
I just thought it might be, bearing in mind we're specifically looking at building control here, we might be able to get that answer.
It seems like we're down to one post. No, and I recently saw on the other side.
We're down to one post that's been extended. Been extended for a couple of months. We're hoping then to lose all reliance on agency staff by the first quarter. But if Councillor Bishop wants that answer, I can provide that separately. I haven't got it on me, but we can provide the cost of that agency person compared to the employee post, and then that will provide the answer of A versus B in the comparison.
I was more looking at the spike in the costs and whether that was solely around the use of agency staff.
I imagine it would have been when you had 5 on my staff.
So certainly, if we're comparing costs now to costs 12 months ago, the costs 12 months ago would have been significantly higher due to the fact we were using a lot more agency staff. But pleasing to report that now has reduced down to reliance of 1, and hopefully in 3 months' time we down to reliance of 0.
I thought you were getting to get debts, but I think if the invoice sent out in September or something, without the benefits, sometimes you might pay slight premium for an individual, but they've got a lot of knowledge and experience, which you can share with some of the junior staff.
Then my final follow-up would be, if Mid Devon are finding there's a lot of competition, how much are we benefiting from a joint partnership? And is it something that we need to review?
So two questions there, Chair. In terms of the latter one, we have built in a review into 2024. We've been in the partnership now for quite a few years now, 5, 6 years, I think.
Right.
Might be even longer. But we have said that it's now time to look at the partnership. Is it still providing the benefits we set out to? When we first went into the partnership, the sharing of the costs was 60%, 40% in favour of us. So we were picking up 60% of the cost because the level of income was greater from North Devon. We're now picking up sort of 65, 66% of the costs because obviously Mid Devon's income has dropped. So we are picking up a higher portion of the costs. But I would still say on paper, it does provide the much wider benefits because you're sharing the manager, you're sharing that experience, and also you're sharing that resource across a much wider landscape. So where there have been resource shortages, we have managed to use some of the alternatives, so some of Mid Devon staff on Mid Devon area, etc. So there are non-financial benefits as well as financial benefits, but we have built a review in 2024.
I think we think there's an audit planned for next year.
Yeah, well, we will do a follow-up on this audit with limited to middle of July next year, pension 425.
So far as the office costs, obviously, we are housing the office for building control. What level of contribution are we getting towards that building, or is it just a nominal that we have the building there for? There are other like the Green Lanes that we're talking about. Well, there's an empty unit there, so why don't we spend £220,000 by putting a one-stop hub in there? How much does that equate to our contribution on that 60%? Because I guess that you've crunched the numbers on the benefit of us giving office space for the partnership.
Yeah, so the benefit of having obviously building control staff there is obviously the staff will be Devon and North Devon, so St Bolton's quite sort of a central point for that. I don't know the exact cost of the Woodlands unit, but those costs are proportionally shared. So as the overall partnership is sort of a 60-40 split, Mid Devon Council picking up 40% of that cost, North Devon Council picking up 60%.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your report, and it's good to see that three of them were worded more tonight. Reasonable. And the feedback again from all the departments were satisfied, majority very satisfied, which was the trend of last year. Well done, thank you. So we're moving on to it's 9 internal audit charge and strategy, dated 25 to 44. Like you said again?
Yeah, so this is just presenting our internal audit charter and strategy that we should do every year. So that's on page 25. So the charter sets out our role and responsibilities, and that of the officer and the committee and so on. This is all the sort of detail for the Institute of Internal Auditors. And then from page 38 is our internal audit strategy, which sets out how we deliver the service, including the need to provide independent and objective opinion on governance, risk management and controls. It's got sections on planning, performance, resources and skills. So I'm not intending to go into a huge amount of detail on that, but happy to take any questions on the.
Just have some questions? No? Good. Moving on. Thank you again. And you again.
Okay, so next section is so the internal audit plan for 24-25, which, as you know, starts normally in April. So the plan's being discussed with senior management and is based upon so you can see the plan includes detail when we last reviewed the audit, and the insurance opinion and the relevant corporate risk and score for each risk area. So that's all the detail from page 50. And the plan involves work in all the sort of different service areas. So I think we've got a good area of balance, but there'll be a live plan that we review and update through the year as risks and issues come to light. And then, so as I said, from page 50, it's got the actual plan. So for clarity, the 24-25 audits are those with the audit days against them. We've included a copy of the 4-year plan. So I think previous committees have asked to see, what work we're doing in future, but that's the audit plans. Have you taken any questions on the paper?
This is weak now.
I was reading the IAA list of top 10 risks today, and actually you cover off all of them. I was just like almost trying to find a question to come to this with. So I thought that was really good. I just wanted to know that I know you're all moving towards agile auditing and all that. What percentage of our plan isn't planned for, or have you got a complete plan and some are, if something riskier comes up, you're happy to shelve those, or have we got so many days available for a disaster?
Yeah, so we would. Yes, and as I said, it is a live plan. So, and in instances where we have dropped some stuff, I mean, it's a discussion with Mr. Triggs there. I mean, he's got a contingency pot of money that if he needs to, that he can draw upon if he wants us to do work while continuing. But we would otherwise prioritize the audit plan to take an audit out and put something else in.
So it's a complete audit plan as it is. It's not like 50%.
No, we don't do that for the districts. We try to do that for Devon County Council and be a bit more agile. But for the districts, I think there's perhaps more certainty of the areas that need to be covered. And it's probably a more efficient way of doing it. To approach it from the districts.
But I imagine there's flexibility. We're agreeing next 12 months. There's level of flexibility. That's like reassurance here. This is the first time we've seen this, and then we've had legacy of previous.
That's right. You've seen obviously the activity in the 23-24.
Yes.
This is obviously the 24-25 plan. And as possibly shown for the next few years, just so you can see what is on the horizon.
I think it should be a useful document.
But it is flexible. The number of days allocated in total at the bottom is 247. There are 7 contingency days built into that as well. So that's where that flexibility also comes in. If all of a sudden something came up that was unexpected, then the board team is flexible then to move audits around. So we do the plan for the year. We then build that into quarters in terms of what's happening in Q1, Q2, etc. But then often that's fluid and that will change as we go through the year as well. So that's where that flexibility comes in.
And you've already discussed the plan with your management team.
We have, yeah.
So I know we will agree it. They've been given a heads up of what's coming there.
Correct, yeah. So prior to coming here this evening,
Yeah.
We look at the draft plan with Paul and the team. Paul then comes to senior management team and we talk that through with all the heads of service because they have that exposure with all of their service areas. They're responsible in the sense for risk management as well. So that's where we have that discussion and at senior management team. There are a couple of audits where we change things around in terms of days. We also added in a couple of new areas of audit work as well. So then senior management team are taking that responsibility for making sure the plan meets their needs and highlighting any risk areas. And then Paul finalises the plan to bring back for your approval this evening.
We've got corporate governance in 25, 26, which might touch on effectiveness of this committee. Councillor Bishop.
Yeah, I was interested in Paul's answer there, that he said he needs to be more agile with Devon County Council. Is that because we're a more stable and planned organisation and things aren't just flying at you from left, right, centre, and all you're trying to do is firefight?
If you're quite carefully asked that.
I mean, if you're constantly, things are just jumping in and the priorities are changing all the time, you do have to be more agile. But I'm saying, is this organisation more stable? Is that why you can have a set plan? And the odd thing,
Let's compare it with other districts to say that are we.
No, specifically said that Devon County Council. I think it's fair to have the example that you need to be more agile with Devon County Council.
I would say districts probably have got the list of things they need to do and more clarity about that list and not a huge amount of changes in that list, whereas perhaps a bigger entity has got more harder decisions to take at the moment.
I think you're agreeing with me here, aren't you?
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think it's really useful document. I'm not sure I got to see the last one, but thank you for that. That'll help us focus going forward. Moving forward to.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Actually, don't.
Just because, in terms of risk, is that as it was last year, cyber security and data security still continues and is more of a risk. We were behind some of the things that we were looking to do to strengthen our position on
We're
that.
covering part B, the risk register. That helps. I'm not sure what I'm suggesting, and also we might be inviting the IT team perhaps the next.
Yeah, we are currently doing the follow-up of our Liberty report from last year, but you'll also note that I think last year we did 24 days. This year we're proposing 30 days because they want to go out to specific areas. So we've actually increased the number of days because it is a very existential risk, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. It's quite good that they're asking for more audits, which is quite very professional. It's what I expect of officers, but
And as you said, yeah, it's on our corporate risk register, it's not highest risk, as it is at
Yes.
most councils. So we recognise that there's been a significant amount of work done by Paul and also working with the team. And we had some external funding from government to improve some of our processes as well. So that's being embedded. And that's why it's important to have, let's say, more data added to the audit to make sure that those processes are strong moving forwards.
thank you. Right, so on to item 11, which is the internal audit annual Township Fraud Resilience Report. It's 59 to 68, and I think we've got Ken Johnson. Can you hear us, Ken?
I can hear you, Chair. Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone there. Apologies, two things to apologise for. A, that I'm not there in person, because I do quite like coming up and talking to you all. And B, I've noticed that the report actually has a misnumbering in the sequence. So anybody who spotted that, well done, and apologies for that. Item 2 goes on to item 3.1, so that's entirely my fault. Apologies. It won't happen again. If it happens again, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. Are you with us here? Do you want to talk us through?
Yep. Sorry, you sort of came through and then you broke up. I'll
Yeah,
carry on.
Screen
Okay.
froze a bit, I think.
Yeah. Okay. As I say, it's part of good governance is reporting on your counter fraud activity throughout the year. I'm quite happy to come as often as the committee require, but it is really good to come in front of you again. And some of you will have been I've talked to before about fraud resilience and awareness and that sort of thing. So what we've tried to do is use the sort of public finance and accounting CIPFA framework as a strategy to try and drive the agenda, if you like, of counter fraud within North Devon and across the partnership for most of our partners. It's some really good work going on, and you know that you're to be commended in trying to get all this together. It's not easy. You'll see from the list later on in the report. It's quite a substantial list of items to comply with. So I'm just going to run through. So the actual report itself is, as I say, the second part of that report. That's the resilience checklist, and we'll go through that in a minute. Apologies, but item 4, which should be probably item 3, the NFI, the National Fraud Initiative run by the Cabinet Office. You don't have a choice whether you partake in that every 2 years. For those of you who don't know, it's all your data is pulled into Cabinet Office, for want of a better word, data washing machine. It gets matched against many other data strands across the country, civil service, local government, major employers across the country, and those matches then come back out to the organisations. I've been sort of liaising with your officers in the council there, and they have cracked on with it, and they've done quite a lot of what needed to be done, and by that I mean they'll be targeting the highest risk records that come back. And it's not just about the potential issues that causes. It's also to show that you're managing your data in a really good way. And as I say, 4.3 shows it. Just going through and actually doing this exercise is a good way of ensuring that you're compliant with DPA or GDPR. So some good work going on with that. It's really difficult to know what to report and what not to report half the time. There's your officers will be able to tell you they liaise with us quite closely on a lot of issues where there may be a technical requirement to understand what is or what may not be fraud, and we give a lot of advice and support in that way too. I just wanted to raise some of the information for your committee that is going through at the moment. There is a creation, and some of you will be aware of this, the central government are taking a huge interest now in counter fraud. Some of you may have been seeing the adverts on the telly. There's a lot of reports in both houses going through about the seriousness of fraud and the amount of fraud that is now within our society. It is the most common criminal offence. You're more likely to be guilty of more likely to be a victim of a fraud than any other offence within this country. And they've put an awful lot of effort into trying to resolve or put things in place to resolve that. So you'll see there are reasons for other things coming through as well. Some of you will be aware about independent reviews and that sort of thing, about disclosure information. That really denotes information around when you look at fraud cases more recently, the amount of evidence that's involved. And I've talked with Mr. Triggs, your 151 officer, about there will be more legislation coming out very, very soon around fraud and a potential new criminal offence of failure to prevent fraud. And we will look at updating the policy and the strategy when that comes out. As I say, it's a sort of call-off service. Your officers will be aware, and you will be aware that should something happen, when we talk about agile, that's probably the best word to describe it. If they need us, we're here, and that will continue. And as I say, do a lot of really good work. I like working with North Devon. The officers are really positive. The officers are really can do, and we're getting somewhere. And I'd just like to point out, especially looking at risk assessments in respect of fraud within the organisation. There's been quite a bit of work done locally, and what I mean is at a granular level within the departments to look at where their risks are. That is going to have to grow, and we will grow it next year. But some of you will or may be aware of the fact that we're trying to, fraud has to be looked at as the same way in risk. You're never ever going to get rid of it, but we can minimize it as much as possible. So that's the only way to adjust and go through that. The report itself is, as I say, very good. There's a couple of bits at the end, couple of instances at the end that we will work with your officers to go through and try and improve for next year. But on the whole, a really good clean bill of health, working in the right way and going in the right direction. So without going into too much detail, I'm happy to take any questions if anybody's got any.
Thank you. Any questions? Wow. Well done. Well, it seems like you've satisfied all our councillors, which it's very good now. But
detail, I'm happy to take any questions if anybody's got any.
Thank you. Any questions? Wow. Well done. Well, it seems like you've satisfied all our councillors, which it's very good now. But I think it's great that you've praised some of our officers, and thank you. Thank our officers for that, and thank you for your presentation. But I mean, I've met Kelly a few times. Devon Audit Partnership on events. If you want to come along, it's partly in two places. Sometimes it's online, sometimes events, sometimes they're in person. Really exciting stuff, believe me.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. External audit plan. On to yourselves.
Yeah, we're going to double head this. So I said, Charlie's going to take you through the plan briefly. Hopefully we'll have a chance to have a look at it. I did say at the intro that I just talked a little bit about some of the consultations. So Chair, you referred to the backlog of the government. I've just been looking at some stats. I think there are 771 audits that are outstanding as of the 31st of December.
Maybe it's 7, I don't know, maybe,
Yes.
I think 70, that's more than 100.
Yeah,
Hundreds, okay,
there's a massive backlog, and obviously there's been lots of discussion over the last 12, 18 months about this and how to rectify it. There's been 3 recent consultations, so one from the National Audit Office, and obviously they pulled together the code of audit practice that we as external auditors work to, and also one from DLUC, the department that oversees local government as well. Both those consultations were out there. They actually closed last Thursday, but they're probably possibly worth a look if you're particularly interested. I suppose the good news is they don't actually directly apply to yourselves, although some of the NAO stuff obviously will essentially apply going forward. The SIPA consultation, very mindful that you mentioned SIPA earlier, so I'll be very careful about what I say about SIPA. I am actually SIPA myself. So the SIPA consultation is also out in terms of what they're classing as short-term changes to the SIPA code that affect the 23-24 accounts and the 24-25 accounts. Now, members will no doubt be aware that the 23-24 accounts run until 31st of March, so 3 weeks' time or 2 weeks' time, whatever it is. So they do impact on this year's accounts. So there's some potential amendments proposed in there, particularly around property plants and equipment revaluation and the pensions valuation in the accounts. 2 massive numbers, and I'm sure, having worked with Grant Thornton, they've talked to you quite a lot over the last 5 years about how much work they actually have to do, and they're not alone. All external auditors have done an awful lot of work to actually satisfy themselves, but also the regulators about the figures that are actually in the accounts. As I say, they're very large estimates, and the issue with estimates is they're an estimate, they're not exactly. So that's it. The consultation is out and available. Should anybody feel that they want to have a look at it. I know John and I talked earlier about, so I think the council is probably going to respond to that consultation, as are we in due course. So I just say that in terms of there's lots of work going on behind the scenes. It may therefore, some of these things may impact on your audit plan for 23-24. And actually, when you look, if you've looked at the audit plan, you'll see there's quite a lot of caveats throughout it in terms of, well, if that changes, we may have to address this slightly differently. So I make no apologies for that, because we're in this, I suppose, this period of flux. We don't know quite how that's going to impact on the 23-24 audit. But just before I hand over to Charlie, just to reiterate, you are in a very positive position, unlike those other councils that haven't had their audit signed, that you have had 22-23 audit signed, completed, certified, closed down. So that's a really positive thing, both for yourselves, but also frankly for us as well. So I'm going to hand over now to Charlie to take you through the plan.
Thank you. I guess I'll take our audit plan as read, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of key points. Our audit plan is here to set out, I guess, the objectives and scope of this upcoming audit for FY 23-24. In there, particularly, just reconfirms what we have agreed with management, a timetable. So in there, we put the high level timetable, aiming for a sign off in November. We've made sure to build in an element of contingency as well into the August-September period, because we're conscious of these changes that might come through. Plus, also being our first year as auditor, we appreciate there will be obviously learning to do on both sides as we work through the process together. So we see it very much as a partnership working together to achieve that end process. You'll see the plan just confirms what we see as what we call our audit risks. So these are areas where we apply heightened procedures. These are areas where you'll see the bullet points set out, which detail what those are. But these, in effect, are areas where we do heightened work, and you'll see that then laid out. And I'm guessing members will be familiar with some of the points as there'll be consistency in some way with what your previous audits has set out. Lastly, just reconfirm our independence. So we have to go through the process of making sure we consider any ethical issues. And we confirm that in our plan that we are independent. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Any questions? No? Excellent. Well, we had a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure after you have, are you planning to be in person, do you think, or online, or?
I think what we were talking about this earlier, because we've tried, so Troy's based on Plymouth, I'm in Bristol, so realistically, it might not be right for us to come to everyone.
No.
I think the key one's probably when we present the audit plan as opposed to tonight, and also it's been very useful to actually meet people face to face.
Yeah.
And when we actually present the ISA 260 at the end of the audit, and hopefully alongside that, we'll also do the auditor's annual report, which is the BFN as well.
When we used to, sorry.
I couldn't actually find the plan as you were going through it, but do you do the value for money one as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. So this plan details the audit itself, but also the work we do with the council's arrangements for value for money.
Okay.
So where we think about the three necessary elements. So in effect, we may be making sure to consider that as part of the review.
I think there's 2-3 lines somewhere in there. How much of page was you mentioned?
It's on page 73, Chair, halfway down, it just touches on the value for money arrangements.
Just some bit. Understood it. Good. Well, thanks for that. Look forward to seeing you again. Yeah, hopefully a chance to try control order. Good. Thank you. So our monitoring officer update report on fraud investigations, aged 83 to 88.
So thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a very straightforward report, really. Thankfully, but this is just the periodic report on whether there has been any instance of fraudulent activity. I'm pleased to say that there haven't been any incidents to report. So yes, so this is just to note that really.
Thank you. Any questions? No. We're on a roll here. Let's get it going. But thank you for that anyway. This is good. It's reassuring. It's question I think George has probably asked me. I'm aware of any investigations and right. No questions. Next one, surely. Half year report from the chair of the government committee, pages 85 to 94. I think it's extracts really of our previous meetings, and I think I've covered the question there that's coming up. Yeah, I think any questions on that? And this goes to full council. Good, thank you. Right, 15 audit recommendation tracker, pages 95 to 114.
Chair. So members, this is the audit recommendation tracker. So following the internal audits that are carried out by all of the teams in the partnership, they're loaded onto a monitoring system, obviously because there are dates for those recommendations to be implemented by. This report then brings that back to you as a summary. If some of those dates haven't been fully achieved, then there may be some requests for date extensions for your consideration. And I'll just run through the appendices for you. So Appendix A just lists the live audit reports in terms of the recommendation numbers that have been given from Devon Audit Partnership. They're categorised into high, medium and low risk recommendations, as alluded to earlier in the internal audit progress report. Appendix B sets out those audit recommendations that have been completed since your last report, which I'm pleased to report there are 9 that have been completed since the last report. Appendix C are the overdue actions where heads of service have updated the progress in terms of progress percentage on completion and latest notes. You'll note there are 7 within this table, 7 that are asking for date extensions. And we'll note they are really short extensions. 4 of them are to next month, to March 24. 1 of them is for June and 2 for July. The two for July are the two on emergency planning that Alex alluded to earlier. So unless members have any questions on those, I'll skip over those. The 4 that are asked for next month of March, we have 3 on the first couple of pages around cyber security. The first one is around ICT arrangements around our privileged access management accounts. This is around our ICT team and the privileges they have, and making sure that operationally that they have the correct privileges and not too many privileges. So there is a review process going on with the team to make sure that they have only got the privileges that they need, but without making sure that we don't preclude them from being able to actually carry out their roles. So the majority of that work has been delivered. There's just a small amount still being concluded. So 95% complete. We were originally planning to do it by December, so just obviously slightly over that. The team are asking for a short extension to the 31st of March just to finish that piece of work off. The second one is around documentation and operating procedures. Again, a significant amount of work has been done, 3/4 done. But again, that piece of work is still being concluded by the team. So again, a short extension to just finish off some of that documentation. The second one is around documentation and operating procedures. Again, a significant amount of work has been done, 3/4 done. But again, that piece of work is still being concluded by the team. So again, a short extension to just finish off some of that documentation by the team. And again, a short extension date to 31st of March on that one. The third one is around something called separate AD accounts, which are Active Directory accounts. This is around centralized systems for Windows and user data and security. That links to the first recommendation that I just talked about in terms of the work that's being done. We're 95% complete. Again, this recommendation links to that same recommendation. So again, we're just aligning the dates to the 31st of March if members are happy with that date extension. Then we have one from the property team, which is around our asset system condition surveys. Originally planned to be done by December. Sadly, no progress on that one. Property team have been heavily involved in some of the major projects that we've been involved in around Future High Streets Fund, Green Lanes, etc. However, important that we ensure that all of our assets and condition surveys on our assets are mapped out. This recommendation wasn't around actually having those condition surveys carried out, but making sure we know which ones need to have the conditions carried out and over a period of time and what requirements are needed. The team are working on that at the moment. They're compiling a spreadsheet to capture our assets and a list of the condition survey requirements needed. And they're aiming to complete that by the end of this month. So again, a short extension to 31st of March to complete that base document. That will then feed into a software upgrade that's currently taking place on the Civica asset management system, where all of our assets are loaded. We generally use that for evaluation purposes, but the new modules will also allow for condition surveys to be captured, electronically stored against each asset, together with photographs, condition reports. So then when you go into the software system, not only can you see the assets and you can see the valuation information, to be able to drill down and look at the condition surveys and what planned maintenance is associated alongside of that. And that's the program that's going to take place over the next 12 to 18 months. Then, Chair, we have the two that Alex referred to earlier on emergency planning. Again, I won't go into those details because Alex has sort of covered those off. We are reliant on the local resilience forum and the plans coming through the Devon emergency planning partnership. So she's requesting 2 extensions to the 31st of July to finalise the work on those plans. And then the final one, Chair, is around car parking. Members have over the last year looked at car parking charges as part of price setting for 23-24 budget. And we haven't increased car parking charges for 24-25. That's looked at it from a pricing perspective. What we now need to do is also look at it from a strategy perspective. So this was a recommendation looking at which car parks we've got, how utilised they are we getting the best use out of those assets? Can we look at payment structures? Can we look at different ways of making payments for car parking and maximising the use of those car parks, but looking at them in isolation to make sure we're getting the best use out of those individual assets? The team are working on that strategy at the moment, and the plan is to bring that to members in either May or June strategy resources for member approval. So Chair, all in all, quite a positive report. There is one final request under Appendix E, which is the annual governance statement recommendations. On there you have previous recommendations, 16 of them. Pleased to report that 15 of those are completed. There is just one recommendation on page 113, which is around progressing the Devon District procurement strategy. Again, we touched on procurement earlier in terms of our resourcing situation. Obviously, the internal audit plan has obviously been moved slightly. We're just entering into our partnership with Devon County Council around procurement so that we can tap into resources as part of a wider Devon partnership. That piece of work is taking place at the moment. We'll then be aligning our procurement strategies alongside that Devon partnership. And that's why the recommendation of the request has come forwards for a time extension to September for that one.
Thank you. I see all my colleagues here. I thought Councillor Bicknell, I'll pull that, yes. Nice to see some shorter extensions. I think they're less often, I think, than what we had a year ago. My colleagues about something different. The only one that concerned me particularly was the assets, which I think you're working on. I think you were with a surveyor, I think, the surveyor when we first connected. So I'm used to seeing condition surveys, ABC categories. It's all about looking at your buildings, looking at what roofs need replacing, what fabrics need replacing, which leads into your capital expenditure sometimes.
It is, Chair. So we had some resource changes last year when our senior surveyor left. We've recruited internally, so we now have a new senior surveyor, we have a new surveyor. We've just backfilled then the resources in that team as well. And obviously that's the key component to carrying out those condition surveys on the assets. So we do building plan maintenance programs as part of budgets. There is a plan maintenance program, a plan maintenance budget. But it's important to carry out those surveys so that it's got a plan, not just for the next 12 months, it's got a plan for the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
So then we can make sure the financial resources match the condition of the assets and when those assets need maintenance.
There is more problems than that's Councillor Bushell.
Yeah, I'd like to make a proposal, because I don't think we are really reducing the number of extensions. I think we did, in the previous, term of councillors, I think things did reduce. And I'm very concerned about creep or drift. So what I'd like to propose is that the way the extensions are reported, we also have a list of every single previous request for an extension on that topic in the box. So we can see members that are repeatedly asking for extensions. We previously said that when an extension is requested, please make sure that the extension is feasible for you to do that work within. And I don't think that system has worked in the way that we hoped it would have done. So now I want a more obvious tracker, because
I'll second that.
yeah, it frustrates me greatly. Officer Driggs knows it frustrates me, and I think we've got to a stalemate again, where we're not making progress. We need to change the way that things are happening to try and G up the progress in the correct direction.
Councillor Jones.
Just on Councillor Bushell's point, I think that officers doing everything they can and have so much resource, but I think it would add a level of clarity if we do include the number of times or something which validates how many times that has previously been extended.
Let's say going back to these reports. Can we discuss that next? We discuss it.
No, we can build that into the report, Chair. Obviously, the data is there in terms of. I think maybe these ones here haven't asked for extensions before. We can double check that. But say for future reporting, if an extension had previously been asked for, and then we're asking for any further extensions, again, we can make that clear in the report so that members have got that transparency.
I wasn't aware of these before, but Councillor Bushell, I know the subject is as concerns and observations about, which is quite right. But I think it's improving the reporting, which is something that's. I don't need to vote on that. I think that's what we're going to.
I think just to add to context as well, we do make it clear to services when they're having their internal audits to make sure they're being realistic with all in the team when they're setting dates, because the temptation is that you have the audit and you'd agree a quick implementation date and then other projects and resources take over. So we're making it clear through heads of service to make sure those dates are realistic. But there are times when other priorities take over and you're almost there on something like we see with the first one, but
It's now 3 weeks away. This meeting was put back in.
absolutely.
Do you want to, as I say, do you want to comment?
Just a couple of points, well, certainly on this question. So I think what you need to be perhaps focusing on is more the high priority ones and perhaps medium ones, and not too bothered about low ones. So that's the first point. In terms of if there's sort of the high ones start to slip, then those are the ones you need to be sitting up saying, well, at the moment. And then just a specific point about the procurement strategy, the one that sort of last mentioned at the end. So as members will be know, the Procurement Act passed, and that doesn't actually come into force until October of 2024. So that's when all the arrangements need to be in place. So there's a thing about you need to develop your strategy and so on in conjunction with knowing that the Procurement Act comes into force in October and all your procurement requirements and stuff need to be in place by then. In fact, the Act gives you additional freedoms to support the local economy and so on. So it's a benefit to you as well in terms of meeting your priorities.
Okay, and I think we're negotiating a partnership for procurement. Or with that procurement officer comes up.
Yeah, we're currently in negotiations with Devon County Council. We're looking to sign, we're joining up with their procurement team, just they have a very strong procurement support that we can buy into, which will open up. Obviously, joining into some Devon County contracts and the use of their procurement framework. So that's something we're quite keen on. Obviously, we were on the verge of putting in a procurement strategy. But in many ways, it makes sense to wait now and merge with the Devon County strategy because that links to a lot of their templates and things that we'll be using. So the reason for that request was really just to allow us to align with the Devon County, Devon-wide procurement strategy and see if that makes sense for us to join in with that strategy.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a proposal and a seconder put forward, and I think for the benefit of the minutes, I beg to differ.
That's fine. Okay. All in favour? Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? You talked about the recommendations that have been delayed. Is there a history here of, I don't know how to work this. When I worked in audit, you'd often write a report and you'd say, right, so how are we going to fix this? And then it sits on your desk for a year. So we're not even at the recommendation stage. Is there a history of that here at all? Or are you pretty good at getting at least the recommendations into the report and proposed dates, even if that is then slipping a little bit?
In terms of the internal audits?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we have an internal audit report, if the team have obviously made some recommendations, we'll provide our management responses and then we'll agree sort of implementation dates. We'll try and be as realistic as we can with those. Like I say, we try not to make them too short dated because otherwise.
So I need to step back from that. So you're like, do you know, we're going to accept this risk, and Paul's saying, actually, I think we do need, is there much history of it's not even getting to a recommendation stage or a management action stage?
No, not really. There is challenge. So sometimes when the internal auditors put forward a number of recommendations, sometimes we do kick back on some of that. So there is a discussion. Sometimes those recommendations are varied because it may just be a context and understanding position in terms of the auditors, maybe not necessarily have understood fully the position that the council are in. So there might be some adjustments to that report.
But is that reported to us as well? Or, because what I mean is more is we've seen when there's a delay there, but from my point of view, there was always a bigger issue when we couldn't even get to this stage because there wasn't accountability on either side.
Yeah, generally we don't come across that now. I mean, normally, like I say, the auditors will put forward their recommendations. I'd say probably a very high percentage of them we accept. We work closely with Paul and the team. There might be the occasional one that we challenge back, and and there may be some common ground that we agree on, but then you will receive that report. You won't necessarily see the draft report, because the draft report comes to management first for their comments, because there might be some further context that we need to add to that audit that's taking place. So then we end up with the final report that comes forward to the governance committee.
So I agree that obviously, the committee would know that we would escalate anything that is of concern to the committee without, and just state we do not agree with management on this matter. Some of it is in the commentary that we provide in the update report. We've suggested this and you told, well, no, so you do get some of that in the update report, but otherwise we would, absolutely escalate something if they're concerned about it. And the reports themselves tend to be agreed and cleared fairly quickly, unlike perhaps in some of other partners who might sit on them for a long time.
But I imagine, well, you wouldn't compromise yourself. It's your report, at the end of the day, you can go strong enough, something you put it in the report.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. So it's definitely a partnerships report. It comes to us for management comments. And even if we don't disagree with something, like say internal audit, have got a concern, they will raise it with themselves as those charged with governance. So that's their responsibility to you.
Thank you.
Could you go more clarity to that? Are you saying that effectively there could be occasions when there's recommendations, but then they're not even get to the point that they're being reported to that even exist?
Not
really
here.
exists, but do you want to take this one?
That's a good question. I mean,
I love the way it's bouncing out.
I'm so keen to come in on.
The big guns are fine.
Just to clarify that all the recommendations from the internal audit report get loaded into the system that generate these reports. So even if the management team sort of discuss that, I think, well, actually, no, like you said, we're prepared to accept that risk. It would come through on your report because it would be a recommendation, and the closure action would be SMT have actually agreed.
Yeah.
So it would be on the appendix
Perfect.
that's being closed in
Thank
the
you.
report.
Interesting where you work in advance, we'd love to know. Right, thank you. So, on to work programme 2024-25, pages 115 to 180. So this is a bit earlier than last year. I think last year it was agreed before.
Yeah, so Chair, this for the committee's benefit, this is obviously setting out the reports and updates that we've received as a committee. They've been updated as to when we're expecting those reports. Some of those reports are standing reports that you'll receive each cycle, such as the internal progress reports from our external auditors on progress. And some of the reports then come at ad hoc periods of the time, such as annual government statement and the draft statement of accounts. So this just sort of sets out that timeline. I think, Chair, there was one you referred to around
Federalist stuff,
which is
that's something that's staffing and
it was on page 150.
first 115, bottom one.
Very bottom, workforce planning, recruitment and retention. So a report from our head of organisation development. That follows a report that you received last September, which was on agency spend versus employed staff. Obviously, there's been a significant amount of work done since that date in terms of trying to reduce our reliance on agency staff. Work we've also done with our employees around wellbeing and staff retention, and also a lot more sort of recruitment activity. And we're seeing a significant number of sort of new applicants now going for jobs that we haven't seen for some months. So I thought it was important that you receive an update from our head of organisation development in terms of that work in progress. And hopefully that will provide some positive reassurance in terms of the work that's been done.
Yeah. And I think we've left some, gaps. But, if something comes up during the year, we'll try to do the agendas, but possibly we'll slot something in that I'm particularly interested in. It's linked to the risks and I think from organisations. We might need to bring IT back about cyber. The next meeting, I think you're presenting.
Yeah, so that would be probably included in our update report on, I'll go up on the cyber security audit.
I'll let you decide who comes to the meeting with some.
Yeah, and I suppose whether you want to receive that report first,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
maybe want an update from the team in terms of the work that's done, or whether you want it at the same time to complement the auditor's work. So that's something we can discuss with the team.
I think prudent use of time to tackle them both at the same time, rather than dragging things on from meeting to meeting.
Yeah.
Do that, Chair?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah.
And Chair, you've got obviously the planned reports from the external auditors, obviously from
Yeah.
Alex and Charlie, built into the November reports. That's the external audit findings report, the external audit annual audit reports. So that's obviously the findings following the audit. That's the planned dates that we're anticipating. Just noticed obviously one thing that we do propose need to move, Chair, which is on the first page, we've got a letter of representation. And that's
Yeah.
booked into September. So that's the letter that the Charter of Governance, we send that back to the auditors at the conclusion of the audit. Obviously, if you're not receiving the auditor's report to November, I can't send that back in September.
Yeah.
So you would need to move that to the November report as well. That's, you're happy with that, Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, 12th November.
Okay, so 12th of November. Yeah, thank you.
And if councillors, get a concern, contact me and we'll look at if we can start something in that's relevant. We'll discuss it. Any comments on? No, good. Thank you. Oh, but it's, thank you. With the change of moving the letter of representation to November, can I have a proposal for this subject? And the second. Thank you, officer. All in favour? Everyone, thank you. Good. So moving on to, if you remember last time, we said they were trying and be a little transparent in part A. So in part A, we're going to list our risks, and then part B, we'll discuss in a bit more detail. So 119. Mr. Tate, is that for you? Anything to say on this one?
Yeah, like I said, for this, so we're actually in part B, don't you?
No, this part is, this is still on.
Just
Part
part
A.
A. So yeah, like I say, just for transparency reasons here, we just tend to list the corporate risks that we have here, just like I say, so everyone that looks at the agenda can see those risks. With the agreement of the chair, we have decided to report only the corporate risks above the risk toleration line. So those that score 6 or above, now are reported on, and we can chat through that a little bit more.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's those are part A. Can we actually are those, yeah, proposer, seconder?
Yeah.
And all in favour to move to part B? Thank you.